Hey, what's up? This your boy Big Man. You know what this is, the latest and greatest spot for your daily hip-hop updates. So today what we're going to talk about is this beef that's going on with Joe Budden and none other than Gillie da Kid, man. So we got some certified podcast beef going down. Now, for those of you who don't know, Joe Budden has been in a beef with a lot of folks behind this podcast game. Now, before we get into the specifics, do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button and make sure you hit that subscribe button, and let's get it. Now, Joe Budden and Gillie have been going back and forth for some time now. It seems like all this stems from the fact that Joe Budden's podcast is blown up. I'm talking about on the major list of podcasts, he is up there upon the top. Only thing I can say is that he's specifically on Spotify, so he's not on a lot of other charts, but he is doing his thing. Now, Joe Budden took to his podcast recently and went after Gillie on some past comments that he made about the ongoing protests. Now, these comments weren't about what's going on right now. They were actually about what was going on 4 or 5 years ago. And he said a couple of things in regards to that, man. That clip has been shown a couple of times, and I don't want to rehash it because, I don't really get into the politics too much. However you play it on the politics side of the game is how you play it on the politics side of the game. I'll just say what he said was in contradiction to what we do and we talk about right now today as far as rights and how people should be treated. Now, Joe Budden went back to go over that clip, man. Even though he knew it was old, he went and trashed Gillie behind that clip, man. He was going at Gillie like it was nothing, man. He was like back and forth just talking about Gillie, man. Even Maul, one of the co-hosts of the Joe Budden podcast, was like, all right, man, you in your personal bag right now. And Joe Budden was like, nah, forget that. Duke is about to get this work today. And, man, Gillie had to reply, man. Gillie said, forget that, man. And he had some things on his mind to say. Now, for those of you who don't know, Gillie is a popular podcaster as well. He's got the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast that's provided by Barstool, and that is big, man. For some reason, Barstool has come in and really took over the podcasting game. Now, there's still big wigs out there that are Spotify specific. You got Joe Rogan, who just signed his exclusive licensing deal with Spotify, and then you've got Joe Budden, who's over there with Spotify. But you got Gillie da Kid and Wallow, man. They got $1 Million Worth of Game. And this show is a hit as well. These are two cats that you just love to hear talk about everyday stuff that's going on, man. Gillie and Wallow play off of each other very well. They got another dude on the show who's an ex-NFL player who has an interesting story, and a lady who's on the show. And it's really good, man. And they are very successful. So the first thing that Gillie went to was he believes that Joe Budden is dissing him off the fact that his podcast has only been out for 8 months and is doing big numbers. So Gillie and Wallow's podcast is killing it right now in the podcast game. They're really doing it big. Them linking up with Barstool was probably one of the smartest moves to make. I mean, there's other type of genres podcast-wise that are on top of the charts that Barstool is invested in. And they just got the crazy game when it comes to the podcast. They just know how to do it right. Get those guys a lot of money and do big things over there, man. So, man, shouts out to Gillie and Wallow for securing that deal. I get proud when I see that mess. I ain't even gonna lie, man. It's dope. But Gillie said that he believes their success in the last 8 months is the reason why Joe Budden is hating on them. Now, I'm not sure if Joe Budden is really hating, man. It seems like dude he's already at the top of the platform, man. He's at the top of the podcast game. Everybody knows the Joe Budden podcast is one of the top podcasts in the country, hands down, man. So for Gillie to say that all this negative energy is coming from the fact that Joe Budden is hating on him, I don't know if I'm feeling that yet. But Joe Budden really wasn't talking about Gillie negative until Gillie and Wallow's podcast shot through the freaking roof. So it's almost like it seems like there's some honesty there, man. So I don't know, man. All I do know is this podcast beef is funny, man. I know that Joe Budden is also beefing with Troy Ave right now. Now, Troy Ave's podcast, man, De Facto podcast, is very small, man. He's in the beginning stages. He's not hooked up to any of these big companies like Gillie or Joe Budden. So he's a non-issue, but he's still kind of that lingering thing that Joe Budden has to address because all these cats started off as rappers. Joe Budden, an amazing rapper who just could not find his way in a difficult game at the time. Gillie, ghostwriter of a lot of the dang cash, allegedly, of a lot of the old Cash Money hits. Great MC. I used to love Mob Figures. You know, Let's Run to the Border Mom. That used to be my jam when I was in school, man. Then you got Troy Ave, who was, man, set to be on the top, man. He was set to be like one of the next type of kings in New York until he ran into a situation. But it's amazing how these guys have transitioned from the rap game and took their Instagram following and their social media following and transitioned that into a podcast game. Because all of them had major followings. And Gillie, he was doing daily updates on Instagram anyways that were getting millions and millions of interactions, and people were just liking to hear from him. And they've just taken this and leveraged it, man, into the podcast game because people like hearing what they got to say, especially when it comes to things that other genres can't talk about, man. Other people can't talk about street stuff. They can't talk about real hip-hop and the old school and the new school and what's banging. You know what I'm saying? They can't set that standard when these cats can, man. Now, I wish they would all stop beefing because this is crazy, but it's actually entertaining as well, man. So I'm all here for it. I'm definitely for it. Now, Joe Budden, man, I don't know, man. What do y'all think? Y'all think Joe Budden is just hating on the fact that Gillie and his cats came up out of nowhere in the last 8 months? And him, Maul, and Rory, they've been doing their podcast for 5 years and reached that super height of success. You know, it's tick for tack, but I don't know, man. What y'all think, man? I think, man, it's just rappers doing rapper things, man. Rappers are always going to be competitive no matter where you put them. It's just a part of the culture, and it sharpens the steel, man. It's iron sharper than iron as far as I'm concerned. Now, with that, it's your boy, Big Man. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button, and we out. Peace.